guys already know how much I love to read. Let me tell you the story of another girl who loved to read. Matilda was written by Roald Dahl and published in 1988. It's possible you may have been hearing about it recently, since this book was also part of the whole Roald Dahl censorship fiasco that happened last year, as of recording this. Also, since the book turned 30 in 2018, the illustrator, Quentin Blank, made a few drawings of what Matilda would look like as an adult. The first time I read this book was many years ago for a library book club I went to with my mom. I picked it up again later on for my children's literature class, and well, I'm picking it up again for this review because darn it, I love this story! The story begins in England with the birth of Matilda Wormwood. She immediately shows early signs of intelligence. She begins speaking full sentences at age 1 and teaches herself how to read at age 3. After having read every magazine in the house, at age 4, Matilda seeks books. So, she goes to the library while her family is out and reads the entire children's section. Matilda then starts to read famous classics that Mrs. Phelps recommends to her. Now, I should mention one important thing. Matilda's parents neglect her throughout the majority of the book. They leave her, a small child, at home alone every day to fend for herself. They don't even care that she's reading Jane Eyre or Great Expectations at age 4. So, that is why Matilda, a small child, had to seek out knowledge herself by walking to the library, because her parents certainly weren't going to provide any books for her. Anyways, Matilda's parents don't like that she's reading instead of watching TV. This leads to a few incidents where Matilda's father gets mad at her. One incident leads to him ripping apart a library book Matilda borrowed. So, to punish her father, Matilda pulls little pranks on him. Such pranks include putting superglue on her dad's hat so he can't take it off, which results in his wife having to cut the hat off his head, borrowing her friend's parrot and stuffing him in the chimney so her parents think the house is haunted, and putting her mom's bleach in her dad's hair tonic. When Matilda is 5 and a half, she is enrolled in Cumbersome Hall Primary School. Due to her age, Matilda is put in the lower class with all the other younger children. Matilda ends up befriending her teacher, Miss Jennifer Honey. Miss Honey is astonished by Matilda's intelligence. She tries to have Matilda moved a grade up, but the child-hating headmistress, Miss Trunchbull, will not allow it. Miss Honey tries to discuss hiring a private tutor for Matilda with Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood, but they pretty much ignore Miss Honey. So how is Matilda to properly learn? Miss Honey actually goes out of her way to borrow textbooks from the higher classes and has her read them while she teaches the other kids in class. Now, I'm sure many of you have heard of Miss Trunchbull in one way or another. When I said she hated children, I meant it. Such incidents throughout the book include throwing a little girl over the playground fence by her hair because she hated how her hair was styled, forcing a boy to eat a very large chocolate cake because he snuck a piece, and when he succeeded in eating the entirety of said cake, he was smacked over the head with the platter. And there's even more that are mentioned but not seen throughout the book, and even some more that are seen throughout the book. Anyways, once a week, Miss Trunchbull teaches one of the classes and tests the students on what they've learned. On this particular day, Matilda's friend Lavender caught a newt near her home and decided to put it in Miss Trunchbull's jug of water during class. Well, once the creature spills out into the glass, Matilda is blamed. Now, Matilda was so angry at this point that she focused really hard on the glass containing the newt to the point that she used telekinesis to tip the glass over onto Miss Trunchbull. After Trunchbull leaves the classroom, Miss Honey dismisses everyone. Matilda stays behind and tells Miss Honey about the telekinesis she just did. Miss Honey believes her after Matilda demonstrates it. Miss Honey wishes to discuss the topic with Matilda further, so she invites her to her little cottage nearby. It is here that we learn Miss Honey was actually raised by her aunt, Miss Trunchbull, after her father Magnus passed away under mysterious circumstances. The police said that Magnus had killed himself, but both Matilda and Miss Honey suspect that the Trunchbull killed him to get his money and the house, which rightfully belonged to Miss Honey. And while Miss Honey did eventually gain the spine to move out, she can only rent a small farm cottage, and her salary is being paid to Miss Trunchbull for her first 10 years of teaching. Miss Honey is literally living on £1 per week. Now, Matilda has decided to help out Miss Honey with her new powers. Matilda practices her telekinesis at home, and then the fateful day comes. Miss Trunchbull is teaching class once again in her usual abusive way when a piece of chalk writes a message on the blackboard all by itself. Now, of course we know that Matilda is doing this, but the Trunchbull sure doesn't. Matilda poses as the spirit of Magnus and tells the Trunchbull to leave and give Miss Honey her house and money, or she will meet the same fate as Magnus did. Now, this causes the Trunchbull to faint. A few teachers manage to carry her out. Miss Honey is grateful for what Matilda did. Now, Miss Trunchbull didn't return for a while, so Mr. Trilby, the deputy headmaster, comes to see if Miss Trunchbull is all right. But when he gets to the house, he finds it empty. Also, Miss Honey gets a call saying that her father's will had been found and she inherited everything he owned. Mr. Trilby becomes the new headmaster and Matilda is moved to the higher grade, working with 11-year-olds now. After some time there, Matilda learns that she can't use telekinesis anymore. Miss Honey believes that Matilda can't use it since her brain is being challenged now. After one of her many visits to Miss Honey, Matilda walks home to find her parents packing in a panic. They intend to flee to Spain. It seems Mr. Wormwood's shady business dealings have been discovered. Matilda doesn't want to leave and asks her parents if she can live with Miss Honey. Matilda's parents agree to let Matilda stay behind with Miss Honey and leave them behind. And that is where the story ends. Now, there is a little bit to analyze here. I want to start with Matilda's telekinesis. Notice what her first instinct is to do once she finds out she has that power. She wants to use it to help her teacher, which is really sweet and says a lot about her character. Now, when she finds out she can't use it anymore, she's relieved. She says herself that she doesn't want to live her whole life performing such miracles. See, Matilda is smart enough to know that having such power wouldn't be good for her in the long run. Besides, who knows what might have happened to her if she continued to have this power? I'm sure you've noticed as I was discussing the story how many of the adults behave around Matilda. Matilda's parents don't care for her at all. Now, I'll mention this a bit more in a moment, but in the beginning of the book, there's an unnamed narrator going over how different children can be and how their parents can behave. The narrator mentions that the most likely outcome is a parent who believes their child can do no wrong, and then leads into how Matilda's parents are around her. Even Miss Honey is shocked to find out that Matilda's own parents don't care about their daughter's well-being. Then there's the Trunchbull, a literal child hater. I know many readers would at first wonder how the Trunchbull is able to get away with all of this abuse, but it is quickly mentioned in the book that if a child told their parents what happened, the parents wouldn't believe them due to how outlandish it all seems. Really, the only thing that stopped the Trunchbull and even Matilda's parents is when their past actions finally come back to haunt them. Now let me talk about the narrator for a minute. The narrator makes all kinds of interesting comments regarding the premise and how different this situation is compared to a normal one. My favorite example is the beginning when the narrator describes how children may turn out. I think an interesting paper idea would be to go over who this narrator might be. Might it be the author himself, or might it be some ghost watching over Matilda? Who knows? I still really love this story. It's cute, it's fun, and it's entertaining. I would recommend this book for ages 7 and up. It's very easy to pick up, and the illustrations definitely help. Plus, it may encourage young readers to read more. Matilda has had 3 adaptations. 1 movie from 1996, 1 musical, and 1 movie of the musical. I've seen the 1996 film, and it's pretty good. There were a few liberties taken that I don't agree with, but I do understand why said liberties were taken to make the story more interesting. I strongly recommend reading this. It's a fun time and may encourage you to seek out other fun books to read. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Happy reading!